it can be very interesting how stories not only inform us about life, but life in turn sheds new light onto stories. One of the ways this is how learning about people can bring depth to characters, both in understanding how characters are written and how they portray life, but also in how we can write characters to better portray life or become real in a sense. They aren't just caricatures or archetypes. In a sense, they can seem like living, breathing people in a way. And in turn, characters in certain stories to make us watch for behaviors or watch for patterns in our lives. And I know for me, it's like either knowing about behaviors or knowing about mindsets and where they kind of lead people down or lead characters and stories down almost has me have this moment where I could be talking to someone or listening to them, and basically it's like I may not agree with all their ideas, but I can kind of understand how they think about them. But then there are certain ones that are just like, danger, danger, Will Robinson. This almost needs to be addressed in some manner. Like it's like something that almost is like, yeah, this is rectable in a sense. This is there may be other things that maybe I don't agree with, but that is something that should be addressed. So it's just kind of funny when I have that moment. So at least interesting to me. But for this purpose of the video, I want to talk about what really matters to people. And this isn't just a moral statement of what really matters, because we all basically have this almost rote list of stuff about what really matters that we can just quote verbatim almost, and it would sound exactly the same whoever you asked. But yet, in the end, what really matters to us? What does that come down to in the end when the chips are down, whatever, however you want to say it? In essence, what is the motivation behind our actions? Or in stories, what is the motivation behind a character's actions? What's really the driving force behind them? For kind of the quintessential example, or like the archetypical quest, we can think of why save the world? Obviously, because it's the right thing to do, right? And again, that's the classic motivation that we can think of. But that may not be everybody's or every character's motivation for going on a quest. You could fill a whole party with different motivations for why they're there. For some, it is because it's the right thing to do. For others, it's because simply they live in the world and they want to keep on living in it. Maybe someone is after for revenge against the villain and they see this as a perfect opportunity to get some added muscle. Maybe another is after fame. Maybe another is after fortune simply because they're traveling all across the world and can find all sorts of treasure chests. Maybe someone else is actually the childhood friend of someone on the trust and they see this as a perfect opportunity to get closer to them, so they're going on the trust too. So again, there are tons of reasons why someone would want to save the world that aren't necessarily because it's the right thing to do. It may not, again, that's why the kind of motivation we would assume, but it may not be a character's motivation. Another way we can think of is what motivates people to get money. Is it simply for money itself? But money itself is actually neutral. It's a tool. So it can be used in different ways. So what is their purpose behind using it? Or are they simply wanting to hoard it and gain more? Or are they in it for the power it gains them, either for how they can use it to buy almost anything, or are they using it to grow a business? What are they doing it for? Are they for caring for others? Are they wanting a charity? Are they looking for security, for having enough stored up for a rainy day? What are they looking for money for? And again, money is neutral. It's not inherently good or bad, but it depends on how we use it, what are our motivations in regards to it. Another way to think of is relationships. Again, we automatically assume that most people have this desire for love. And again, we do have almost a desire for love, but for some people, they simply want a relationship for the physical aspect. Or some actually do want the relationship with the emotional state. But others almost have this manipulation in relationship. They don't necessarily want that other person. They want the idea of the other person, or they have this idea of the other person and they want to manipulate the person into being that, or they have the idea of the perfect relationship and they actually could care less who the other person is just as long as they have their idea of the relationship. So then there are kind of unhealthy things, but then it's kind of key to know that while those things to be interesting in the story. In our real life, it's kind of important to be on the same page of the relationship with whoever we're in it with, so that we both understand what's going on and what we're expecting from the relationship. And again, a lot of people have this, well, I'm not going to say a lot, but there are people who desire control, whether or to be free from control. And then there's kind of the two sides to that. They either want to have control of their own lives and destiny, or they want to have control over others. Some want to be free from control. Some want the power to do whatever they want. Some want the power to kind of live their life freely. And then there are also a multitude of goals that can be accepted as mini motivations. Like maybe someone wants to retire their parents, someone wants to buy a house for their family. All sorts of things that can motivate people and what really matters to people. What will they do when that goal is met? Those sorts of things. Another thing we can think of is how appearances can really matter to some people. And for some people, appearances don't matter at all. But for others, it's like everything has to be perfect. They can't let the tracks show. Even on their worst day, they have to be smiling and perfect and kept. Well, maybe not on their worst day, but they could be really struggling, but they aren't going to let it show. They aren't going to talk about it with anyone. Yet life is not really perfect. So there is kind of a pushback between that, but I also know that not everybody needs to know what you're going through. But then some people really place the value on appearing perfect or having it all together. And that is almost like their primary motivation. So the worst thing ever would to have the tracks show to have everything fall apart on them. Or in public, I should say. They can have everything falling apart on them, it just can't be public. But to have it be public is where they would really struggle. But another way appearances can be desired by people is when people desire to appear right in a certain situation, or appear like a good person, or feel like they are a good person. Because there is a fine line between that and actually being right about something and doing what a good person does. And again, that's kind of a moral statement. So you may agree or disagree, but the thing is that wanting to feel like you are right about something and or at least appear to others as you are right about something does not mean you are right. It just means that you think you are right or other people think you are right. You could be totally off about it. And the truth to be something that you are vehemently disagreeing with it. And there are people like this where you could actually explain the truth to them, the actual facts of the situation, and it's to be like, that's wrong, this is still the truth that I'm sticking with. And it's like they are basically rejecting reality at that point. They're rejecting the quantifiable world because they want to feel like they are right about something. They have to hold on to the fact that they are right rather than actually valuing the truth over being right. Because then, when you value the truth, you tend to be like, okay, I was wrong. Let's go with what is right, what is true. And it's kind of a similar thing with the feeling good. As in, feeling good about something does not mean you're actually doing any benefit for it. Again, there are lots of people who will make complaints about something, but yet they're making complaints to either like the people who aren't actually causing the problem, and yet they're blaming them for it, or they aren't actually doing anything about the problem. Maybe they're actually contributing to the problem, or they're expecting everyone else to do with the problem now that they've pointed it out, because that's their job. They just have to point it out. Everybody else should be doing it. So, but then it's like, or then it could be a moral thing where everybody else is saying this is a good thing to do. This is what good people do. But actually, the good thing is something else entirely, is actually the opposite of what you're doing. So it's something to really consider and think, because a lot of people do value that feeling good or feeling like they're right rather than actually doing right and doing good. Because then it's like, what is the primary motivation? Is it that you want to be seen as a good person, or is it you want to be a good person? So it's something to really consider, where there can be very nuanced stories, but also something to be aware of in the real world, because it's something that I really feel happens a lot these days. But just because someone has a motivation at the beginning of a story, it's not the end of it. After all, most good stories involve a character going through some sort of development. And I guess kind of the typical example of changing motivations would be in Star Wars, where Han Solo begins his part of the story as having a very identifiable motivation that is in contrast to almost everyone else's motivation. Yet by the end of the story, he comes to share the motivation, or at least partially, by the other characters just in the nick of time. So it's just something to really be aware of because motivations do change. In some stages of life, we can be motivated by one thing, but in others, it may not motivate us at all. Or we may have priorities at one time and our priorities change. So that's just something to be aware of as we grow and develop ourselves. But anyway, these are just some ideas, and there are probably more that can let us know why a character is doing what they're doing, or why a character should be doing something in a story. After all, what are their motivations? That tells us what they would be doing rather than what does the plot need them to do. So again, what would the character actually do rather than just what the plot requires of them? And it also lets us know why people tend to make some choices that really surprise us at times. Or at least give us insight into, like, wait a minute, maybe they actually have a different motivation than I thought. But anyway, these are my thoughts on this. Why not feel free to share yours in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, you can like and share it so others may enjoy as well. Anyway, I'm Jonah, and you've been watching Lions Mane Media, where we celebrate stories and lessons with them. Thank you for listening to my musings. Talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.